The Denver Broncos are gearing up for a pivotal moment in their playoff push, and they got huge news right before the Sunday matchup against the Bengals. Key players are making their long-awaited return from IR, adding fresh firepower to a roster that's already fighting tooth and nail for a postseason spot. But here's the question. Can their return tip the scales in Denver's favor, or will it be too little too late? Let's break down how these returning stars could shape the Broncos' playoff destiny. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Let's start with the playoff picture for the AFC as things stand after Week 16. Denver currently holds the 7th seed with a 9-6 record. They're just one win away from clinching a playoff spot. However, head-to-head tiebreakers are not in their favor. They've lost out on those against the Steelers, Ravens, and Chargers, which makes it completely impossible for them to climb to the 6th seed. That means they're likely headed toward a showdown with the Bills in the wildcard round. We'll dive deeper into the playoff picture a little later. Now onto some good news that surfaced during Denver's mini-bye week. Head coach Sean Payton shared an update on Riley Moss, expressing hope that he could be back in action this Saturday. Moss has been sidelined for the last 3 games, dating back to the second half of Week 12 against the Raiders. The key takeaway here is that there's optimism he'll return soon, which could be a big boost for Denver's defense heading into the final stretch of the season. The team could have placed him on injured reserve to open up a roster spot, but instead they've held out hope that he could return sooner. Now the focus is on getting him back for this Saturday's game. It's a short week, but it's even shorter for the Bengals. They've got just 6 days to prepare compared to Denver's 9. This matchup is shaping up to be an all-hands-on-deck situation for Denver, especially with the Bengals' offensive firepower. Ja'Marr Chase is on pace to win the NFL Triple Crown, leading the league in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He's been unstoppable. And while T. Higgins got banged up in Week 16 against Cleveland, the Bengals still have plenty of dangerous weapons who can attack over the middle of the field. Now, let's talk about the key matchup. Ja'Marr Chase versus Patrick Surtain 2. This one could very well decide the game. While we don't have much history between the two, there's one game to reference. Chase faced the Broncos once in his rookie year. It wasn't a memorable outing for him, just 1 reception for 3 yards on 4 targets. From a football perspective, it's hard not to get excited about watching these two go at it for a full 60 minutes. Ja'Marr Chase is one of the league's top receivers, and Surtain is among the best. It's the kind of battle that defines games. So if Chase continues his dominant season and puts up another 100-yard, 1-touchdown performance, it's hard to see Bo Nix keeping pace with Joe Burrow. But if PS2 manages to lock Chase down, it changes everything. Suddenly, the focus shifts to T. Higgins and the rest of the Bengals' receiving cores. And if Riley Moss is back in the lineup for this game, that could make things even tougher for Burrow. The Bengals' offense has been clicking this year, but their defense has struggled. So if Bo Nix and the Broncos' offense can put up around 24 points, and the defense manages to hold the Bengals to 23, even if it's not Denver's best defensive showing, it might just be enough to secure the win. A lot of that will depend on Patrick Surtain, 2, and Riley Moss limiting the impact of Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. Now, Vance Joseph should listen to this. He should make sure Surtain is shadowing Chase all game long. If Ja'Marr Chase scores a touchdown because Chris Abrams-Drain is covering him, that's a moment that could have serious consequences. Denver's defense has had a lot of success this season, but moments like that could derail all the hard work. This is a must-win situation, and keeping Chase in check is non-negotiable. Losing this game would put Denver in a tricky spot heading into Week 18. While it might not technically be a win-or-go-home situation, losing could mean they no longer control their playoff destiny. That's why it's crucial to go all in with Patrick Surtain shadowing Ja'Marr Chase. If Chase manages to beat your top corner, you can live with that. It happens. But if he beats your second or third corner because Surtain wasn't assigned to him, that's the kind of decision that's hard to justify. It could leave the team and fans struggling to move past what might have been a preventable mistake. Furthermore, we might see another shakeup at the running back position. Jaleel McLaughlin was out for the Chargers game with a quad injury, and if he's unavailable this week, we could see more of rookie Audric Estime, the day 3 draft pick out of Notre Dame. Last week, he had 9 carries, the second highest of his young career. So far this season, he's put up 252 yards on the ground, averaging 4.6 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. While he missed some time earlier this year, Sean Payton has been hyping him up lately, hinting that we'll see more of number 23 in action. That said, it seems like Javonte Williams might be seeing a reduced role. Unfortunately, Williams has had a tough stretch recently, with 6 straight games logging fewer than 10 carries. Javonte Williams just isn't performing like the Premier. Back this team once hoped he'd be. While he's still finding his way onto the field, he hasn't been providing much impact lately. Then again, it's not like any other running back in this backfield is setting the world on fire either. For the final 2 games of the season, I'd expect to see more of Audric Estime and less of Williams. And honestly, hopefully more of anyone who can step up. Because this team is gearing up for the playoffs, and they'll need all the help they can get. Now, let's circle back to the playoff picture and break it down a bit further. As things stand, Denver is on track to face the Bills in the wildcard round. Buffalo is 2 games behind Kansas City for the top seed in the AFC. If the Bills lose or the Chiefs win in Week 17, Kansas City locks up the 1 seed and won't have anything to play for in Week 18. That scenario could set up a Bo Nix versus Carson Wentz matchup for Denver's playoff hopes. But first, the Broncos have to get past the Bengals on the road, a game they're not favored to win. As for the wildcard standings, Denver trails the Chargers and Ravens, and there's no catching those teams. They've lost the season series to LA in head-to-head matchups against Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Right now, it's a bit of a pick-your-poison situation. If it comes down to the Bills or the Chiefs in the playoffs, I'd lean towards saying the Bills might be the better matchup. But honestly, it's a lose-lose situation when you try to figure out which team gives Denver the best shot. Both teams present significant challenges. Now let's look at the teams behind Denver. If Indianapolis, Miami, or Cincinnati lose any of their last 2 games, they're automatically eliminated from playoff contention. Things get tricky if there's a 3-way tie at 9-8 involving the Broncos, Colts, and Bengals. In that case, the first tiebreaker isn't head-to-head matchups, so Denver's win over Indianapolis doesn't carry as much weight. The same applies to the Chargers. If they finish 9-8 and end up in a 3-way tie, any head-to-head advantages they might have over other teams wouldn't come into play either. So step 1 for Denver is simple. Win and you're in. But if they lose to Cincinnati, a real possibility given the firepower of Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, and T. Higgins, their playoff hopes hinge on other outcomes. In that case, the Broncos would need to root hard for the Bengals to lose in Week 18 when they travel to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. The best situation for the Broncos would be if, by the time they play the Chiefs in Week 18, they already know they've secured a playoff spot. This could happen if the Steelers beat the Bengals earlier that day. If that happens, the Broncos wouldn't have to worry as much about winning against the Chiefs to stay in the playoff race. Instead, they could focus on improving their game and preparing for the playoffs without the extra pressure of fighting for survival. If the Bengals take care of business against the Steelers in that 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff, it sets up an even more intense Week 18. I know this might seem like looking too far ahead, but it's really just 1 week away. So let's be realistic. Taking care of business in Week 17 is the ideal scenario. But it wouldn't be shocking if Cincinnati pulls off a win. Joe Burrow and the Bengals are no easy matchup. This hasn't been their year, but they're still a dangerous team offensively. Defensively, the Bengals have struggled. Trey Hendrickson leads the NFL with 12.5 sacks, but as a team, Cincinnati is bottom 10 in sacks with just 30. Hendrickson alone accounts for nearly half of that production, which highlights the vulnerabilities in their defense. There are holes to exploit. But if Burrow and the Bengals offense put up 30 points, Bo Nix and the Broncos offense will have to match. And let's be honest, a shootout with Joe Burrow isn't the scenario Denver wants to find itself in. So, what's the answer? Denver's defense needs to step up. They haven't been at their best lately, giving up 30 points to both the Browns and Chargers in back-to-back games this month. That's not the kind of form you want heading into a critical matchup like this one. It's a game that definitely makes you nervous as a Broncos fan, but the good news is that even if Denver loses to the Bengals, the sky isn't falling. They'll still control their playoff destiny in Week 18 against the Chiefs. And as for the Chiefs, they might be rolling out Carson Wentz and their backups in Week 18 if they lock up the top seed this Sunday. Their matchup against the Steelers on Christmas Day could be the deciding factor. If Kansas City wins, they'll likely rest their starters the following week, which could make things a lot easier for Denver. Now, if you believe the Broncos can pull off one more win and punch their ticket to the playoffs, let's keep the positive energy going. Hit that thumbs up button down below. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and talking Broncos with me.